Hello students, this is Mrs. Little. Today I'm going to be explaining to you some information that will help you with your project number 1 for English 11B Alt, and that is your narrative writing project. And so in the course already, you have probably seen this document. It says Narrative Writing Project Builder across the top, and you have a couple different options with this project. You can complete the project builder, or you can write a story. Either way, you really need to understand the 5 elements of the story and how they will help you create a story, whether that's filling out this project builder or creating a real short story for the class. So in order to help you with that, I have a definitions page here, and that definitions page really goes into pretty good detail on a lot of the basic elements that you will need to know to complete this. And today I just wanted to go through the 5 most basic elements of that, because if you are going down all the way on this project builder, you will see a story arc. Now, you need to have a story arc in your writing regardless, whether you're writing it on this document or you're actually writing a story. Either way, you're going to need to have a story arc, and you're going to need to have these different 5 elements of a story. It just depends what form you're giving them to me, whether you're giving them to me in the project builder or whether you're giving them to me on a story that you've written in a Word document. And so because of that, I wanted to go over these 5 basic elements. So the 5 main story elements that you have seen in your book in your course so far, but also probably in other courses, are characters, setting, conflict, plot, and theme. These are probably very familiar to you. Now, in terms of characters, the most important ones that you're going to see crop up are the narrator, the protagonist, and the antagonist. Now, not every story has a narrator, but if there is a narrator, they're probably a really important character, and they're giving you potentially some of the information that the author wants you to pick up from the story. The protagonist is the main character of the story. A lot of times it's the hero, but sometimes the protagonist might not be very heroic. So the protagonist is essentially the main character in the story. The antagonist is the person going against the protagonist. And so often they're the bad guy going against the hero, but again, you might not have a hero bad guy situation. You might just be having characters against one another, especially if you have certain types of conflict. And I'll share an example of that further on. All right, the setting is really simple. That's where and when the story takes place. Now, conflict, there are multiple types of conflict, and conflict is essentially the main issue in the story. There can be multiple types of conflict within a single story. Those 5 types of conflict are man versus man versus himself, man versus nature, man versus God or gods, and man versus society. Of course, all of these don't actually have to be a man. It could be a woman, could be a child, could be multiple people, could be aliens against each other. We just use the term man here to be general. And so the example that I was talking about earlier with a protagonist and an antagonist, if you have a conflict in your story, which is man versus self, the interesting thing is that your protagonist is the man, and your antagonist is also that same man if you have man versus self, because he's at war with himself. So that might help you out a little bit when you're trying to decide, okay, we're not just doing hero, bad guy, we're doing 2 main characters and how they are in conflict with each other. Okay, and the last of those 5 elements is the plot. And the plots are the event of the story that make up that story arc. If you remember back in your book, it shows you, back in your course, it shows you kind of a line and then a triangle shape. And that triangle shape is the intensity of your story and how it builds up, reaches a climax, and then comes back down. So your exposition of a story is where that story is exposed to the audience. It's becoming clear to us where our story is taking place, who our characters are, what the conflict is. The rising action means that the action, the conflict in the story intensifies. The climax is the point of highest intensity. This is the most intense point in the story. This is usually not in the middle of the story, even though it's at the middle of the story arc. It's just that there's two before and two after, but usually our climax is further along in the story because you want to keep your audience engaged most of the way through the story. And then most stories have some falling action, and then they have a resolution where all the conflict is resolved. And then the last element is theme, and theme is really tricky for people, but a theme is a main idea within the story. So it's something that the author wants you to come away with that's meaningful. It can be vague, like the theme of a story could be love or death or honor or courage. It could be like a big idea that you're just exploring. Or it could be very specific, like you're supposed to get from the story the message that love conquers all. So a theme can be very specific or it can be very vague. So please use these tools here to help you out with this project. You can access this slide in the teacher pages. Then you have this project builder to help you work through the project. And if you're still confused, you also have this elements of a story that's linked inside that project builder. I hope this is helpful to you. Please reach out if you need any more help.